Symbolically, it means the absorption of the divine principle in the world of multiplicity, in Maya. Generally speaking, the male partner is thought of as the divine principle, and his Shakti or female counterpart is thought of as the Maya, the world illusion. But at the same time, this is also to be understood literally. Namely, that there is a form of yoga which uses sexual love as its method. Now, some of you have read my book, Nature, Man and Woman. How many of you have? Well, I won't repeat myself too much then, because in the end of this book, there is a study of what this kind of yoga is. But I found out more about it since I wrote it. All methods of yoga, meditation, have as their object the deliverance of the mind from the tyranny of exclusive attention, where we see this but not that, figure but not ground. In other words, the object of meditation is to expand consciousness. And this involves being able to let things go and let things happen. But as you all know, when you try to let things happen, you're still interfering. Now, the two things then upon which yoga would concentrate are, first of all, breathing, and secondly, you could say perception, breathing, and sexual functioning. When you breathe, you have to learn how to let breathing happen, and not force it. When you see, or hear, or touch, you have to learn how to let sense experience happen and not force it. And in the same way with the sexual relationship, how to let it happen and not force it. They say the yogi doesn't breathe. He gets to the point where his breath is completely still. This is only a metaphor. Don't take this literally. Just in the same way, when he talks about yogis contemplate their navels, they don't sit around looking at their belly buttons in the literal sense. To contemplate your navel means to have your mind centered on the center, the navel of the world. Where is the navel of the world? Why, now is the navel of the world. Here is the navel of the world. Because all round, everything distant from you is the same distance away. And there's much past as there is future, you see? Because you're in the middle. So to be here is to be at the navel. So to contemplate your navel means to get with it. In the same way, the yogis are supposed to concentrate on the sun. Well, some yogis do indeed practice looking at the sun. And the only reason for that is this, that if you look closely at the sun, it makes you aware of your sense of sight, so as to turn sight back on itself. It's an unusual overstimulation of one of the sense organs. And that overstimulation of a sense organ will turn the sense back on itself. Suppose now also you put your fingers in your ears, and so that you get humming noises, or you press on your eyeballs. It's the same thing. or you take some drug, you see, which makes perception, by altering perception, makes it aware of itself. So you turn back on yourself. That's the same thing as to look at the navel. To be conscious of being conscious, aware of being aware. Ordinarily one isn't, you see. Ordinarily one is aware of everything else. And so through being aware of everything else, you get misled, to forget who you are, to forget that what I am is not really different from what I see. You, if I don't know you, I don't know me. If there are no others, there's no myself. So as a great rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi once said, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. There's the conspiracy, you see, which is all hushed up, that I am not you, and that you are not I. But since we can't exist without each other, and we can't have knowledge of I unless I have knowledge of you, that means we go together in the same way as the back and the front. There's another way of saying the back and the front are two aspects of the same thing. So then, to let something happen introduces you to a new feeling whereby you can transcend the difference between the voluntary and the involuntary. Ordinarily, you see, we say what I do is restricted to those actions which are under my voluntary control. I am and I do what I can do voluntarily. I can raise my hand, but I cannot voluntarily decide to have hiccups now. I can't voluntarily decide right now to have a bowel movement, to go to sleep, to have a sexual excitement, or whatever. All those things are defined then as being not under my control, and in that way not myself. But the tantric practices are designed for one to understand that you are also what is involuntary. Now, breathing is a special case in point because it's very easy to experience breathing in either way, either as something that you do or as something that happens to you. You can feel, I am breathing, I am doing it. But you can also equally well feel, it is happening to me. Now, which is it really? It is thus that through concentration on breathing, one is delivered from the dualism of the voluntary and the involuntary. So in exactly the same way, the tantric sexual practice is allowing it to happen without forcing sexual relationship in any way. And this means, therefore, that it tends to be a sexual type of relationship which you could call contemplative rather than active. If you see the statues of tantric figures, by and large, the male figure is seated in the lotus posture like a Buddha, like the Buddha here. The female sits right on his lap, wraps her legs round his waist and her arms round his neck. And they touch at all points: the mouth, the breasts, the sexual organs, the eyes, looking straight into each other. But they're motionless. They're completely still. They don't, in other words, work towards an orgasm. See, Freud had the idea that sexual pleasure is release from tension. That what we work towards is the orgasm as detumescence, as escape from tension. But many people would disagree most strongly with this and say that's part of it, but that it is just as wonderful for there to be tension without any attempt to escape from it. Maintain the tension as long as possible. And in any case, don't try to get into it. Just let it happen. That is the attitude of these sexual images of the sexual yoga. To let it happen. And to be completely still and completely open and aware. And if you do this, you'll find a very strange thing happens. You will become the other person. And you will experience yourselves as a single organism, where the two bodies literally melt into each other. It's as if there is electric currents or something in our bodies, which ordinarily bat against each other. But in this way of sexual yoga, the two currents become a single current. And it's exactly, melting is the only way I could describe it, the best metaphor. The two bodies fuse. Now, there are certain different schools of thought about this. Some say that in the tantric exercise there is no orgasm. It is entirely what's called coitus reservatus, or karezza, to use the Persian word, and that the sexual energy is thereby transmuted into spiritual energy. Some say, you arouse the sexual energy, but instead of dissipating it, you send it up the spinal column into the brain. You all know, presumably, the symbolism of yoga, of the Kundalini, that at the base of the spine there is called the serpent. Kundalini, the serpent power. And that the object of yoga is to send your concentrated energy down your spine to knock on that snake's head and say, "Wake up, man, go up the tree." And the snake wakes up, and he goes slowly up the spine, energizing each chakra or center of nervous telephone exchange. Each one, as he gets into it, boom, a new world is open to you. Boom, boom. Finally, he gets into the 1,000-petal lotus in the head, and then everything is lit up. You know all things. And eventually he goes out through the top of the head, where there's the sun door. The head corresponds to the firmament of heaven. The sun is the door in the firmament through which you see into the transcendental world. And the snake goes out that door, and you're liberated. That's why yogis are always drawn with above their skull a bump here, or a flame. And that's why the dome of a church has a spire on top of it, see? Or a lantern. That's the sun door, the exit. Now then, so the serpent power is, of course, a phallic image. In the drawing, the Hindu drawings of the Kundalini in its chakra, called the Mooladhara Chakra at the base of the spine, the Mooladhara is an inverted triangle. Well, of course, that's the feminine sex organ. And inside that triangle is drawn a male phallus, and the serpent is coiled around it, asleep. And that serpent coiled around the phallus in the middle of the female organ represents the energy of life right deeply and ultimately involved in illusion. The farthest out that the Brahma can get from itself. Absolutely in that woman, you see, where I don't even know I'm me anymore. Mama, in the womb. And gradually, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. So the symbolism behind one school of Tantra is that sexual energy is the Kundalini, is the serpent power, is the divine power. If you dissipate it in orgasm, you'll lose it. If you conserve it, you raise the power, raise the orgiastic feeling, but don't have orgasm. Instead, direct the sexual energy up the spine into the head, you'll get illumination. And many tantrics practice this way. They use the intense fascination of sexual arousal to be the instrument, the incentive for intense concentration on each other. So that you look with the whole, you see, supposing you look into the other partner's eyes, and your interest in the other person's eyes is coupled with sexual fascination, you have colossal power of concentration to look and look and look and look and look and look into those eyes. Now, if you concentrate long enough, you go into trance, and if you know how to handle trance, you go through trance into samadhi and so on and so on. Now, that's one way of playing the game. But there's another way. And this is doesn't take it so literally. It's not saying sexual energy is not something, you know, that you can waste. It isn't like money. You don't dissipate, you don't lose blood or something like that, see? Now, the Chinese have their kind of sexual yoga, and in their way, they don't cut out the orgasm. They let the orgasm happen, not forcing it to happen, but when due time comes, when it feels like it. I mean, you don't aim at it, you don't push the thing so that you get that experience. You let it happen in its own time. But what they do, they didn't know what they were doing, but the female puts her fingers on the male scrotum in a certain place where the semen does not eject but returns into the bladder. And those Taoist alchemists interpreted that as sending it into the spine and up into the head. Actually, it's a method of birth control. And the Hindus, there are no records in the Hindu documents of doing it that way. This is the Chinese equivalent. The point in all this is that as you become experienced in letting the sexual relationship happen in the same way as you might let your eyes see, let your lungs breathe, let your heart beat, you begin to experience what the Taoists call wu wei, or non-striving, or rather the experience of all the involuntary functioning as the same thing as yourself. So that you feel the external world, which you call involuntary, it happens to you, you see? Instead of saying, it happens to me, it attacks me, it's something alien. In this way you learn to experience the involuntary as you. And so the external world is you. So the female partner or the male partner is you. And all the things that happen of themselves are, as a matter of fact, much more the real you than those things of which you say, I do them. In addition, of course, the the Tantric sexual yoga practice brings about a quite astonishing kind of fulfillment. It is perfectly marvelous for women, because it slows men down and is a very peculiar way of bringing two people into extraordinary close mutual feeling. Because, as I said, the melting sensation gives a very curious feeling of the unity of the two organisms as one new organism. So with this aspect of Buddhism in mind, and of Hinduism, you can see, can't you, how in a way far beyond anything we've ever admitted in either Christianity or Judaism, there can be a world-affirming, a body-affirming, a body-transforming aspect of these methods. Now, Christianity theoretically admits a sacrament of holy matrimony. It admits to the canon of Scripture the Song of Songs. But imagine, what is matrimony, you know? Let's take the theory of it. Matrimony is a sacrament. The sacrament is defined as an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. And a sacrament always involves the union of the divine and the material. The bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. The water of baptism becomes the vehicle of the Holy Spirit. All right, what's the matter of matrimony? What fulfills matrimony? What consummates it? Why sexual intercourse does. There are certain theologians who argue that the matter of matrimony is the contract. That's a lot of baloney. The matter of matrimony is sexual intercourse. That is what consummates it. And so the ministers of the sacrament of matrimony isn't the priest, it's the couple. The priest blesses the marriage. But imagine it being admissible in Christianity to consummate the sacrament of matrimony before the altar. Why, that's unthinkable. When people screwing in church, that would be awful. That would be just blasphemy, according to our notions. But it would be nothing at all incomprehensible about that to a Hindu. If you read the Kama Sutra and how their ideas of having intercourse with one's wife is fantastic. It's a ritual. And if you really go about it, you fix her up first with sandal paste and brushes and things. You make her look like the goddess. You decorate her with all the appurtenances, the bangles, the bells, and all the things the goddess is supposed to have. And she likewise to her lord makes puja and offers flowers and incense and so on. And they go about it slowly, slowly, slowly. This is not an affair you toss off in a couple of minutes. It takes a whole day.